Scrum, a framework within which people can address complex adaptive problems, while productively and creatively delivering products of the highest possible value. This definition is from the Scrum Guide, the official document created by Scrum's co-creators, Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber. In this video, we will explain that definition and describe the theory of Scrum. Scrum is described as a process framework, rather than a complete process for building products. One important distinction is that Scrum is intentionally incomplete. It does not specify all of the steps required to build a product. Instead, it describes the framework within which a variety of processes and techniques can be deployed. The Scrum framework consists of Scrum teams and their associated roles, events, and artifacts. Each of these core components has a few simple rules, and there are simple rules describing the relationship and interaction between the components. Anything not described by those components and rules is not part of the framework. The Scrum team decides which processes and techniques to use within the framework. If the team or the organization were to decide to remove or alter any of the components or their rules, they are no longer using Scrum. Scrum exists only in its entirety, and each of the core components and their associated rules serve a specific purpose. The second part of the definition describes something called a complex adaptive problem. To understand that, let's look at a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, problems that are simple, predictable, and static. On the other end, problems that are complex, unpredictable, and adaptive. Most professionals are familiar with how to address problems that are predictable, and are able to create a detailed plan. This approach is known as defined process control, which means that we define a specific process for every step along the way. When things are more complex and unpredictable, this approach is not very effective. We should instead use something called empirical process control, so let's explore what that means. An empirical approach is one that is based on observations and evidence. Empiricism is the central idea behind the scientific method, that we can find out what is true through experiments with concrete, observable results. Scrum is based on empirical process control, and so significant aspects of Scrum are designed to provide transparency, inspection, and adaptation. To create transparency, Scrum's events and artifacts are visible to all of those responsible for their outcomes. Frequently inspect artifacts and progress towards a sprint goal to detect variances. Frequency of inspection is balanced so it doesn't get in the way, but still provides opportunities to correct. If, during inspections, anything is determined to be outside of the goals of the sprint, adaptation is made as soon as possible to optimize for a better outcome. To summarize, Scrum is a lightweight framework made up of roles, events, artifacts. It is simple to understand. However, since it relies on empirical process control to address complex adaptive problems, it is difficult to master.